Okay, today I want to bring you 3 books that if you haven't read philosophy are a great place to start. And these books are very approachable, very simple. And at the end, I'll give you a bonus book that it's going to be even more approachable, but I'm going to leave it for the end just to force you guys to click through the video. But anyway, I really made this video because someone asked me, where should I start with philosophy? What's a good book to start with? I'm interested in the subject. And the answer I gave was Meditations, but I don't think that really did enough. I don't think that was really a good answer because it doesn't really describe my issue with philosophy. My issue with philosophy is a lot of it is people saying the same thing, saying 2 or 3 really interesting ideas in 500 pages and hiding those ideas in between the lines of like really rigid language, really boring language, and talking and waffling about things that really aren't that interesting. And the vast majority of philosophy is boring. There's a million philosophers that I'll never read. There's a million philosophers that I pick up and I put down. Like, I read a book by Kierkegaard. I didn't even suggest it to you guys because I was just like, this is not inspiring. This is not interesting. I started reading Aristotle. I put it down. I probably won't ever pick up that book again. Like, there's a lot of things that I read, that I've tried to read, that I just can't get into because it's not inspiring. And I think that's the biggest problem with philosophy. It has some of the greatest insights, but also some of the greatest wafflers ever. And I want to really give you a few suggestions that are going to inspire you to begin reading the subject, because once you touch your toes in, that it becomes much more approachable. Once you have an idea of what philosophy is, what philosophy can bring to you, the inspiration it can give you, you can be more patient with more granular things. Like reading Beyond Good and Evil is not fun. Reading Beyond Good and Evil, like, it's one of Nietzsche's greatest books, but it's not interesting. It has some interesting ideas, but it's not something that you're going to read and, having never read philosophy, enjoy. And my effort in making this video is to inspire you to actually enjoy reading philosophy, because most of self-help, most of self-improvement, most of self-discovery, most of psychology are all derived from philosophy. And it's really this simple. All philosophy can grant you is the ability to perceive things in your life differently, the ability to conceptualize things and approach problems in a more logical and more responsive manner that allows you to live a better life. That's truly the greatest gift of philosophy, but everyone gets in the weeds of things. Everyone says my system's right, but it's this system. So here's a few books that you can read that are really going to help you. So the first one I really want to suggest is Ralph Waldo Emerson's Essays. Ralph Waldo Emerson's my favorite philosopher, so I really need to push and shill his books first. But basically, when you read Emerson, you read a manuscript for the soul. It's not something that's going to be very surface level. It's not something that's going to be like an observation that you've ever been able to explain. Emerson has a great way of explaining things that you've always known, but you could never quite put into words, that you can never quite conceptualize. And once you know it, once you feel it, it's something that will stick with you for the rest of your life. And some of Emerson's biggest ideas come from, his essay of self-reliance. Socrates, Plato were misunderstood, so why do you want to be understood by the masses? To be great is to be misunderstood. He had other ideas, such as when you put the responsibility and the ability on yourself, then you can make a change. But until you do this, you will continue to blame others and continually be in the same situation. He also had a great reverence for the nature of things. He was very much a Taoist in certain senses, and his essay Nature, his essay Circles, really put into perspective of the idea of change, the idea of accepting the cycle and the flow of things, and enjoying the experience, enjoying the things that happen to you, enjoying the ups and downs, because with every single action, with every single event in your life, there's both equal parts good and equal parts bad. And to me, Emerson is the greatest philosopher because in 10 pages, he can say what a philosopher couldn't say in 500. And he's more a poet than he is a philosopher. And that's perhaps what I like best, because certain things can only be grasped in between the lines. Certain things can only be grasped through your own interpretations, and telling someone what to think and giving them a rigid structure, I think, is counter to what the greatness of philosophy offers. And that's why I suggest this book. Most of Emerson's essays you can get online for free, but I like the physical copies, so I'll link this book at the end of, or in the description of the video. But just know that most of the things you can get online, they're freely available, and they're probably going to take you like 20-30 minutes to read each of his essays. But in reading each of these essays, you're going to have a lot of growth. You're going to be able to understand what it is that you have to do with your life, and you're going to understand what it really means to be a human being. The next one I want to suggest is meditations. The reason I suggest this is it's just the most widely available. Like, you go to Barnes and Nobles, you go to a bookstore, you go on Amazon, there's 100 different copies of meditations. They're all different translations. And I mean, I really do like Marcus Aurelius. I really do like some of his ideas, but it's a very simple book. It's not meant to be something that's like very thorough, very thought through. It's something that's very simple, that's just a reminder to Marcus Aurelius on how to live. And because it's written in like a journal format, I think it's very simplistic, and it's a very easy book to follow, and it has a lot of great ideas. I don't think it's the level of Nietzsche, I don't think it's the level of Emerson, I don't think it's the level of Schopenhauer, but it is a very interesting book, and it will give you a very interesting moral framework to begin to think about. Stoicism, to me, is like a lesser offshoot of Taoism, a lesser offshoot of the ideas of Schopenhauer, the ideas of Nietzsche, the ideas of Emerson, but it's a very easy book to read, it's a very quick book to read, and it's a very fun read at that. And I think once you read Meditations, it's kind of the start of your progression into philosophy. I know Joe Rogan talks about it, I know online everyone talks about it, I know it's the end-all be-all when it comes to Stoicism. I don't think it's even the greatest Stoic work, but I think it's a great place to start because of its approachability, because of how easy it is to read. And I need you to understand that, like, if you pick up this book, you will put yourself on a great journey ahead of yourself, because it's not one thing to read one book and take those ideas and live by it for the rest of your life. It's to take the ideas of 100 different books that you all loved and interpret these ideas, these principles into your life. Create your own Bible to live by. Create your own code. Create your own way of life, and that is the path to happiness. I think everyone gets too wrapped up in one ideology, this versus this, but I think it's through accepting the amalgamation of the things that you are inspired by that gives you the best moral framework to live by. The last thing is The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. I picked this specifically because it's like 100 pages. Some of the ideas are very complex. Some of the ideas are kind of rigid, kind of boring, but I think Camus has a very good style of, just as you're getting bored, just as you're not interested, bringing you back in. And Camus has some very interesting insights in this book. The overall principle of the book is that you must imagine Sisyphus smiling in the spite of all the monotony, in spite of all the pain and sacrifice and heartbreak in your life. You must be able to persist. You must be able to find satisfaction and gratitude in the small moments. And, you know, Camus really breaks down the human pursuits into 3 alleys. He breaks it down first into, I don't remember the order, but there's the 3 aspects are the Don Juan, the womanizer, and in the end he understands that, like, all of the pursuits, all of the women he pursued, it meant nothing in the end. He talks about the conqueror who pursues the expanding of the borders, who pursues the endless conquest, and in the end they die and their empire is eventually taken over. And the last one that he talks about is the actor. The actor gets fame and accolades in an effort to be remembered, in an effort to have their name live on. But the truth is, they're not known for who they are, they're known for the characters that they play. And it's almost this ironic pursuit of more, this ironic pursuit of eternal life that gives us a false hope that we can continue on living. And the truth is, you must be accepting of the fact of the lack of permanence of life and be happy with this, because it gives our lives urgency, it gives our lives meaning, it gives our lives depth. If you had thousands of years to live, then you would have no reason to do anything today. You would have no reason to do anything tomorrow. And it's this idea that I find most inspiring. It's this idea of laughing almost in the face of your smallness, because think of this world. We live in a world where everyone takes themselves so seriously. We live in a world where everyone thinks that they're this or they're this. I'm this, big advocate. I'm this. I'm going to be a politician. I'm going to be this. I'm a great writer. I'm a great philosopher. Like, it's so funny that we think we mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you look at your life, it may seem important, but take a bird's eye view and look at the world. In the whole course of the world, even right now, you're insignificant. Now let's look at the whole course of human history. You're still insignificant. Now let's look at the whole course of the universe. You're literally below a speck of dust. You're literally nothing. And it's so funny to see how seriously we take ourselves and how seriously we take our lives. And really the overall message of the myth of Sisyphus is to smile in spite of this, to find joy, to find happiness in this life that we live, because that's all we can do. All we can do is find happiness in the day-to-day, because nothing else in the grand scheme of things matters. And I think this is one of the most inspiring ideas. This is basically the summation of Buddha's phrase, all suffering is desire. It's the summation of Taoism, and I really think it's a great philosophy. And very short book, very easy book to read. And now we get on to the book that I was saving to the end, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. This really isn't a philosophy book per se, but I think it synthesizes a lot of arguments of philosophy. I think there's a lot of elements that you can grasp from philosophy. This book was really the foundations of my understanding for Jung's anima animus principle. This book basically analyzes how you live and how other people live, and this relation. Like, it's really good at framing things of, this is how this person is thinking, and it's not necessarily wrong, but understand this is how they're thinking so that you can better adapt. And this is how you respond to certain situations. So when you're dealing with people, understand your own biases. And I think it's a great introduction to some psychological ideas as well as philosophical, because when you really break it down, there's not really a difference between psychology and philosophy. Most of Freud comes from Schopenhauer. Most of Jung comes from Freud. Like, basically every single idea from psychology was once a philosophical idea, was once evaluated by Plato and Aristotle and all these great minds throughout history. So I think if you really weren't interested in anything I said before, this is going to be a great resource to start getting a large overview of the subject of philosophy. And I think if you start reading all of these books, you're on a great path. I will link all of these books in the description. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for watching this far. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.